Back for another edition of In the Huddle, guys. Carl Dukes put them up along with my man Jason La Canfora. Brian Baldinger, part of this podcast as well. We head into Thanksgiving games. Thursday, Friday, we get Black Friday games for the first time in the NFL. But we got to talk about what happened last night first and foremost, guys. Monday Night Football. Jason, we were looking forward to this game. Eagles, Chiefs. Eagles come back in the second half. They don't allow the Chiefs to score in the second half. It was 17, and then they didn't do anything else the rest of the game. And I thought this was a gutsy win by the Philadelphia Eagles last night.
Sure. Absolutely. It just, I think, speaks to their maturity, their ability to handle game situations and find ways to win, from the quarterback throughout their roster to their coaching staff. That nobody panicked, nobody got crazy on either side of the ball. They just continued to make little tweaks. It was a huge, in so much as a regular season game can be, another huge feather in Howie Roseman's cap. I mean, you're talking about the Bayard trade where they were going to influence their spine before the trade deadline. Which safety were they going to get? Well, they got a safety who picked off Patrick Mahomes at Arrowhead in the end zone, right? Critical play in the game. The Eagles are not filling up the box score the way they were last year. We did have that 3 or 4 week stretch, right, where A.J. Brown was unstoppable. But otherwise, they did it on the ground, which is really hard to do against the Chiefs this year. They did it on the ground at a time when I think that the Chiefs probably figured that's what they would try to do. And they still, to keep Mahomes on the sidelines, because the Eagles' pass defense hasn't been as good this year. Yet the Chiefs still couldn't really, have a solution for it. They activated Jalen Hurts' legs a bit, but nothing crazy. Certainly not the kind of option football they were playing this time a year ago. They won the fourth quarter, which they've become accustomed to doing that, right? They did it against the Cowboys just a few weeks ago. Really, really sound football operation. As for the Chiefs, the defense is their strongest side of the ball. It's not even particularly close right now. I thought the Chiefs coming off a bye would unlock something else in their pass game. It didn't happen. The Chiefs have a personnel problem catching the football. They don't have playmakers in the passing game. We've been saying it since the game against the Lions, week 1. Not much has changed. I don't think you can expect much to change at this point. They didn't get enough at the trade deadline. They didn't address the receiver room nearly significantly enough. And the arrow's not pointing up significantly enough on any of those individuals. They can't score in the second half of games. It's become an epidemic now. It's about a month long. They're still going to win a lot of games. They're still a really good team. Patrick Mahomes any given Sunday and all that, sure. But I think we're going to find out something different about the Chiefs this year, because I think the Chiefs are not going to be the 1 seed. I think the Chiefs are going to have to play at least some road football this year in the postseason. And that'll be a brave new horizon for this group. And as presently constructed, it might be their undoing.
I agree. Last night, Mahomes held to 177 yards, passing 2 touchdowns. Very un-Mahomes-like kind of game. And you talked about the pick in the end zone, in the red zone. Why are these guys dropping balls, Jason? Like this has become
they're not very good.
Well, they're one of the top 5 teams in drops this season. It's not like it's the quarterback not putting the ball where it needs to be. So, I mean, you wonder, like, how is this going to play out in a situation where they may be in a playoff game and you get those drops that you got last night and it cost you. So, now all of a sudden I'm thinking about the Chiefs in the offseason. Okay, win or lose, Super Bowl or not, you got to go find a number 1. You got Kelsey. You got to go find a number 1 wide receiver, or maybe draft that guy if he's available. But the way things play out, they're not going to be drafting high. So Marvin Harrison and those kinds of players are not going to be there available for you. I'm just looking at this team differently offensively. I didn't think last year the Cheetah was as big of a deal, and then it didn't play out that way because they won the Super Bowl. This year, I feel differently.
Well, Carl, on number 1, how about a number 2? I mean, how about an outside receiver who would start on the majority of the 32 teams in the league? Like, let's start there, right? Like, they don't have that guy. Rice isn't that guy. Valdez Scantling isn't that guy. Kadarius Toney isn't that guy. No. Sky Moore isn't that guy. We can do a long list of dudes who aren't that guy, or a real second move tight end. Like he's all right. He's all right. But like if they had a proven bona fide second move tight end who would start on most other teams, right? Then I would even buy them being able to just shred people in 12 personnel. Like we've seen teams do that in the past. We had, New England, right, with the Gronk and Hernandez thing. Like they don't even have that. Like, yeah, it's not. Mahomes can only do so much, and they drop easy ones that are lobbed into their hands in the screen game. They drop comebackers that hit them in the numbers in the intermediate game, and they drop go routes that are placed right in their catch radius while they're in full stride, 50 yards downfield. They drop them at all 3 levels. I don't know if Andy Reid just simplifies it and gets some of these guys off the field, and he does just trust the 12 personnel more than the 11. And, it's more even, it's more Jerick McKinnon. Like he might streamline it down to 2 backs and 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers. Like that might be the answer, because running all these different guys out there, you're getting 25% timeshare on routes run. You're getting 15. You're getting 30. Like
it doesn't make sense.
I don't think that's going to work. None of these guys are good enough. So we'll see. But see, that's what I kind of thought we were going to see last night. I thought last night you were already going to see some of those changes, and I'm like, well, maybe some of that stuff might be at least a little more efficient in the red zone than what we're getting these days, or to this point. But it wasn't. They ran the ball a little better. If you're looking for positives, I like the way they established Pacheco early. But this offensive line is not great either. So they're vulnerable to me, brother. Like this Chiefs team on the road having to play from behind. I won't be live betting them on the money line. I'll put it that way. And you're waiting for that moment and say, can you get any money on the Chiefs to win this game? Like, are they down far enough that now's when you fire that bet? Because Reid and Mahomes, they might not cover, but they ain't losing.
Yeah,
it's not them anymore.
No, I agree with that, and I know Chiefs fans are not freaking out because they're still 7-3 and all of that, but it's the details. It's the small things that allow you to win in this league, especially in the playoffs. And that's what we're talking about, guys, here. It's In the Huddle. Jason La Canfora, Carl Dukes, Brian Baldinger are part of this podcast as well. Watch us at In the Huddle Pod on YouTube and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Guys, we're heading to, week 12 here in the NFL. And we're going to talk more about the Thanksgiving Day games and what's going to happen Friday. But there's a couple of things that are going on, and this just came down today. We are recording this podcast on Tuesday. Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, has been fired. The Steelers are 28th in points, 28th in yards, 31st in passing yards. I don't even know how they've won the games they've won. I'll be honest with you. But we've talked about this division a lot, Jason. What does this mean for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward? Not sure if they've named the interim yet. As I said, this information is just coming down.
I think Mike Sullivan's. I think Sullivan's going to be calling plays.
Okay.
Well, Carl, there's nowhere to go but up. There's nowhere to go but up here. This is a hopeless offense. I mean, they couldn't get to 13 over the weekend. They couldn't do anything like sustainable on offense. You had Jaylen Warren with a couple of big plays, and that was it. Like they don't have any calling cards in their passing game whatsoever. And we're heading into Thanksgiving. I mean, they average 16.6 points a game. Like you mentioned some of the yardage woes. I mean, they're also 25th on third down and 25th in the red zone. Like, and now they're running the ball. So you would think, okay, they've established the last 3 weeks, 66 rushes, 371 yards, 5.6 a carry. That's fourth in the NFL in that span. 3 rushing TDs. Boy, if they could just do anything at all, passing the ball. But Pickett's regressed. I mean, you've got people like DeVito out there throwing more, touchdowns than Pickett ever has in a game. And so it's come to a head. You had players, right, Najee Harris and others starting to voice their frustration. And I think more than anything else, Mike Tomlin, knowing him, I think he took the temperature of his defense and calls in the Watts and the Haywards. And even though Minka's not playing, Minka's on the sidelines and Minka's talking to people. And Minka's really active and said, all right, guys, are you about to break? Like, have you had enough? Do you give up on this? Do you think it's hopeless and desperate over there? Because if you do, then I'm going to try something else. Because I got to try something else because I respect what you do and what you've meant to us, and I can't lose you. And he has the kind of relationship with players where I think they can have that kind of straight talk. And that's what I believe has happened in that building the last 48 hours. And so does this light a little different fire under Kenny Pickett? Does something change? Because as well as, like, look at their schedule. They don't play Murderers Row. And as well as they're playing defensively, now stopping the run with Cam Hayward back, and the offensive line changes they made have got them running the ball well. It's not going to take a whole lot more for them to be back in the, to be in the playoffs. So it was a long time coming. They were really slow in activating Warren and making him the lead back. I think a lot of that's on Matt Canada. And I also wonder, do they lean in a little bit more to option football principles themselves and play with, Pickett's got legs. And if he ain't throwing touchdowns, then maybe it's time to play around with the mesh point with him and Warren a little bit more. Maybe it's time for a little more wildcat, and I think we'll see that. And I think they're going to go to Cincinnati. And I already played this game. I don't know if the line's going to move because of this, but I fired a few bets on it Monday night. Pittsburgh -1. I think they're going to, like, Mike Tomlin's not losing to DTR and this what's his name? Browning,
the backup.
Yeah,
the backup.
He's not losing to those two guys.
Jake Browning
games in back-to-back weeks. Okay, that's not happening. That's not happening.
I commend Mike Tomlin. Everybody was calling for this to happen earlier in the season, and he was patient. It hasn't cost him yet because you said it. They still have a chance to get to the playoffs. If the record was worse, I think this would have happened earlier, but he kept giving him opportunities to try to get this right and to make it look and feel different. And then now he's gotten to that point where it doesn't, and he's got to do something. And so we've seen now in consecutive weeks 2 offensive coordinators fired. The Bills fired theirs, and now the Pittsburgh Steelers have fired theirs. And I think the message is, guys, at the end of the day, you get to this point in the season, you feel like, hey, we've got a team that can compete and maybe do something, and it's just not happening. You got to make changes. Here's the deal. Sean McDermott did what he did, and I felt that was a scapegoat move. This feels like it was a necessity.
Definitely.
There were 2 different feelings about the Bills and the Steelers and the way they went about this. And that is why, you know what I'm saying, Jason? This feels like this was the right thing to do. The Bills situation was like, wait a minute, your quarterback is screwing up. He's turning the ball over. It's his fault, but yet you're going to blame this guy and run him out of there. And then everybody, of course, is going crazy because the Bills scored points the other night. This feels different.
I agree completely. It is different. This is their core critical problem. It was the one area where you could justifiably have the most skepticism about if you were going to fade the prospect of Kenny Pickett developing or evolving and that offense taking off. you could make the case that Matt Canada was holding them back. With the Bills, I mean, yeah, Allen threw some picks, but the coordinator in the heat of the moment from 40 feet above in the press box can't do much about that. And they had special teams meltdown, too many men on the field. That's on the coach. They had a stupid blitz call that allowed the Broncos to set up that field goal. That's on the head coach, not the offensive coordinator. And it was panic time, and the owner, who's been a bit of a nincompoop in the past, starts sniffing around and asking questions again. So you make somebody walk the plank and you give them a pound of flesh, right? That's very different than this. Both may prove to be relatively effective, but Freiermuth's back, and I'm not saying he's great, but he can, he can run around, he can move. Deontay Johnson's been back there for several weeks now, and everybody other than Jaylen Warren is languishing in that offense. Pickens, he's done nothing the last 4 weeks. Like you can't have everybody underachieving on one side of the ball other than, in the pass game. So we'll see. Again, nowhere to go but up. I do think just the change in and of itself will be a little bit of a breath of fresh air, some different ideas. And I think they're going to run it down the Bengals' throats.
What do you think about now as we look at the standings in this division? Listen, Burrow goes down. We said it. They're done, right? I mean, you may make a run here, but you're not going to win the Super Bowl. But more importantly now,
you're not getting the playoffs.
Yeah, well, a 5-5, and that's the thing. If the Steelers win this weekend, you're absolutely right. But Ravens, Browns, 8-3, 7-3, Steelers 6-4. What happens in this division now? We've been talking about this division all season, Jason. And I know, again, we've talked about Baltimore. Every time I get extremely excited about them and say, hey, look at what they're doing, you say, wait a minute, they come back down to earth. But I still have to believe this is their division to lose, despite them losing to the Browns a couple of weeks ago. And despite the Browns losing or winning, last week. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if anything changes in my head, even with this Matt Canada move, is where I'm going with the Steelers potentially jumping the Browns. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens have a tough schedule ahead, but they also are coming off a Thursday game. They play the Chargers. Yes, there's a lot of travel involved, but the Chargers look like they're unraveling as much as any team in this league. And their head coach is a joke. He's
okay,
an embarrassment right now.
Let's talk.
So I don't
let's
think
talk
that
about
group's going to rally for him.
So I think Brandon Staley, with the way things have gone, the way now that he's handling the media and attempting to control this situation, Jason, and you've seen this. You and I have been doing this a long time. You've been around coaches who have tried to do this. It never goes right for them, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if he's not fired maybe after this weekend if they don't win.
Yeah, I mean, look, he should have been fired after the playoff meltdown a year ago. His defense has been – he's been there 3 years now. The defense has been fraudulent. And they cried about injuries forever, and they can't cry about – now, I know Bosa's finally hurt, but it's week 12 and your season was over. You blew it. You couldn't stop Jordan Love. I don't know what they believe in defensively. I don't know what their overarching principles are. I mean, Aaron Jones goes down and this guy's thumping his chest about we stopped the run. They can't run the ball to begin with, and they lost their lead back. And Dylan's been beat up and he hadn't done anything all year. Like you stopped the run. They were throwing all over you. Jordan Love threw for 300 yards. He came back on you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're horrible across the board in the pass game. You don't rush the passer with any acumen. They've had 3 games where they've gotten off for like more than 5 sacks. The other 8, they suck. They don't get any pressure. So whatever. No, you can't start pointing the finger at play. Keenan Allen's been a warrior for them, played through all kinds of stuff. Like the sacrifices physically he's made and the way he's carried that offense at times throughout his career. And he has a moment that he'd want back, and that's where your deflect, your don't look at me, look at him. Your cover my ass self-preservation, keep giving me this paycheck even though I never deserved it in the first place. That's where your soul goes. Like, that's your character. That's who you are. And you've done nothing. You got overhired. You were hyped by the media. Your agent did a tremendous job of getting jackasses to carry your water. You've backed it up with nothing but failure on your side of the ball, and you're throwing darts at Keenan Allen. He wouldn't have got on the plane for me, brother. But then again, he wouldn't have got on the plane home in the playoffs either. So, yeah, I don't think that stuff's going to rally the troops.
I don't either. I really don't. It is Jason Lock on
they're
4.
They're a failure defensively.
They're terrible, and he's saying, I'm going to continue to call the plays and I'm a genius. Jason Lock on 4, Carl Dukes with you guys. It's in the huddle. Subscribe, like us. So, Jason, let's talk a little bit about the Broncos and what's been going on there before we talk about these games coming up on Thursday and Friday. Jason, they started 1-5. They've won 4 in a row. All of a sudden now, Russell Wilson and Sean Payton look like they are coming together. And believe it or not, guys, they may challenge the Chiefs in that division now when you start talking about what could potentially happen. Jason, are you buying what you're seeing with the Broncos?
I don't know how you can't, right? I mean, this is a league that the most important stat is wins and losses, and they're stringing wins together. It's not super sexy, but again, what is the state of offensive football in this league? It's not looking great for anybody. It's not looking great for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It could turn out that the biggest win for the Kansas City Chiefs this season, is the Thursday night game that they squeaked by Denver with all those field goals when they couldn't score in the red zone. Because, if Russ completes a forward pass in that game and Denver sweeps Kansas City, we'd really be talking about this division in a different way. Remember, Denver easily could have beat Kansas City twice in 3 weeks. And it was that first loss to Kansas City that I think really started turning things around for them, because they saw, hey, we're not that far off. There's issues with Denver. I mean, Minnesota, who can't run the ball on anybody, gouged them on the ground, right? And Denver, even during this 5-week run of success, is still giving up almost 5 yards a rush. That's dead last in the league. Minnesota, 36 carries for 175 yards and a touchdown. Denver's not great. Yards per play, 27th the last 5 weeks. They're only 18th in yards allowed per pass. But what they're doing is turning people over in the red zone, and not allowing teams to score touchdowns. Denver has allowed 8 offensive touchdowns, Carl, the last 5 weeks. That you don't have to score a whole lot when that's what your defense is giving up. 1.3 touchdowns per game. That's pretty damn good. And they're turning people over. They've got 14 takeaways their last 5 weeks. That's first in the NFL. And they get Dorian Thompson-Robinson in altitude in Denver on the road. Yeah, I think they'll turn them over, Carl. What I liked about this game against Minnesota was they couldn't do what they had been doing to people lately, road grading them, just handing it to Javonte Williams 20 times and waiting for the levee to break. Williams only carried it, 11? They only had 15 carries as a team. It wasn't Russell scrambling for his life. Even when they got behind, they stayed within themselves. Sean Payton managed that game expertly. And Russ Wilson can still be a magician in the fourth quarter like that. He's going to look like a below-grade quarterback for stretches of these games. But can he find Cortland Sutton in the end zone on a perfectly timed jump ball when he's the only guy on the field who can catch it? He's showing he can do that. And with the way they're playing defense right now, from a scoring aspect, that's enough. They know who they are. They don't turn it over themselves. Say what you want about Russell Wilson. You can't turn him over these days. You can't. And they're feasting on takeaways, and they're not turning it over. And when they stick with it in the run game, they can wear you down. They've become an elite time of possession team the last 5 weeks. They're running the ball, even after not doing it so much against Minnesota. Still, over the last 5 weeks, they're running the ball as much as anybody. And that plays this time of year. So, yeah, I think you have to take him seriously. I mean, it's an elite head coach. He's going to put those guys in positions where they can keep winning games. So, in a year of parity and watered down football and all this stuff, they've got a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl. Say what you want about him, you know? And they've got a head coach who's won a Super Bowl. And they've got a defense that is incredibly opportunistic and that is at its best when the field gets short. So, yeah, it's a good thing Andy Reid survived them on that Thursday night. Otherwise, Denver could have an inside run to the division.
Let's talk about one other quarterback change in the NFL, and that is Zach Wilson being benched. Tim Boyle's going to start against the Dolphins. We're going to talk more about these Thursday night games coming up here. The Thursday game, should I say, in just a second. What took so long, Jason? What took so long?
You tell me, brother. I don't know. I mean, this is a joke, though, because they're going to somebody who is just going to be thrown to the wolves at this point.
Yes, he can't play either. We know.
They need someone. They need a guy who's won some games in it. Like they should have been. They could have at least brought Flacco back. He was there before. Like it's shameful. It's shameful. They've been mismanaged from the beginning. Like they built the team without an offensive line. Period. Like they got a 40-year-old quarterback and stuck him with no offensive line and a bunch of his hand-picked old players who can't play. It wasn't going to work with Aaron Rodgers. It's definitely not working with Zach Wilson or Boyle. You know, like they're like DeVito is the best starting quarterback in the New York metropolitan area right now. Okay, so
that's it.
Have fun with that, gangrene. You know, Fireman Ed, knock yourself out on Friday afternoon, brother. You've got no chance.
It's going to be ugly. Hey, guys, we are going to take a look at these games coming up on Thursday. Make sure with us with these episodes as we get closer to the end of the season, certainly the playoffs. Can you guys believe it is week 12 in the NFL? Like, I can't believe that we're already here, Jason, with week 12 and all that's at stake and what's going on around the NFL. So we got a lot more to talk about. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Have a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. And make sure you check out our games. We're going to talk about the games coming up on Thanksgiving Day and on Black Friday. So you check that out, guys. Jason Canfora, Brian Baldinger. Enjoy the holiday.